You finally have a day off. No work, no obligations, nothing on the calendar. And instead of feeling relief, you feel panic. You sit down on the couch and your brain starts screaming. You should be doing something. You're wasting time. Everyone else is being productive. You're lazy. You're falling behind. So you get up. You clean something. You check emails. You find tasks that don't need doing. Anything to stop the voice that says resting makes you worthless. If doing nothing feels like committing a crime, this one's for you. Because what I'm about to explain will finally make sense of why your brain treats rest like failure. And spoiler, it's not about laziness. It's about programming you didn't ask for. Here's the truth. Feeling guilty for resting isn't a personality flaw. It's not you being dramatic. It's your nervous system running software from a world that told you your value equals your output. That being busy means being important. That rest is something you earn, not something you need. And now, even when you're exhausted, even when you've done more than enough, your brain still won't let you stop. Because stopping feels dangerous. Let's start with what guilt actually is. Guilt is your brain's alarm system for violating a rule. It's supposed to keep you in line with your values. But here's the problem. The rule you're violating isn't yours. It's someone else's. It's your parents who said idle hands are the devil's playground. It's the culture that glorifies the grind. It's the teacher who praised you for working through lunch. It's every message you absorbed that said productivity equals worth. And now your brain has internalized that rule so deeply that resting triggers the same alarm as doing something morally wrong. Think about that. Your brain treats taking a nap the same way it treats lying or stealing. It registers rest as a violation, as something shameful, as proof that you're not good enough. And that's not an accident. That's conditioning. That's years of being told, directly or indirectly, that your value is tied to what you produce, that you're only as good as your last accomplishment. That rest is laziness, and laziness is failure. And here's where it gets worse. You're not just fighting your own guilt. You're fighting a culture that's obsessed with productivity. A world that asks, "What did you do today?" as a measure of your worth. A society that treats burnout like a badge of honor. That celebrates people who work themselves to death and calls them dedicated. That shames people who set boundaries and calls them weak. You're trying to rest in a world that's constantly telling you that rest is the enemy. No wonder your brain is confused. Let me paint you a picture. You're a kid, and the only time you got attention was when you achieved something. When you brought home the good grades. When you won the game. When you did the chores. Love wasn't unconditional. It was transactional. You learned that affection was earned through performance. That being seen meant being useful. That rest meant being forgotten. So your brain wired itself to believe that the only way to be loved is to be productive. And now, decades later, you still believe it. Even when nobody's watching, even when you're alone, you can't stop performing because your brain thinks that's how you stay safe. Or maybe you grew up poor, or adjacent to poverty, and rest wasn't an option. It was a luxury. It was something other people got to do. And you learned that survival meant working, that stopping meant falling behind, that rest was a privilege you couldn't afford. So now, even when you have enough, even when you're safe, your nervous system still thinks you're one break away from disaster. Rest feels reckless, like you're gambling with your security, like you're tempting fate. Or maybe you grew up watching someone work themselves to death. A parent who never stopped, who never sat down, who wore exhaustion like a trophy. And you learned that love looks like sacrifice, that being a good person means suffering, that rest is selfish. So now you can't rest without feeling like you're betraying them, like you're disrespecting their struggle by doing what they never got to do. The guilt isn't yours. It's inherited. It's generational. It's trauma dressed up as work ethic. Here's what's happening in your brain. Every time you try to rest, your amygdala, the part that handles fear and threat detection, goes into overdrive. It scans your environment for danger, and because rest was coded as dangerous in your past, it sends alarm signals. Your cortisol spikes. Your body tenses. Your thoughts spiral. You're not safe. You're lazy. You're not resting. You're failing. You're not recharging. You're falling behind. And the only way to shut off the alarm is to get up and do something. Anything. Because productivity feels like safety, like control, like proof that you're not the lazy, worthless person your brain is terrified you are. But here's the kicker. Rest isn't the opposite of productivity. It's the foundation of it. Your brain can't function on empty. Your body can't perform on fumes. Creativity doesn't happen when you're exhausted. Problem solving doesn't happen when you're burnt out. You're not being productive by refusing to rest. You're running your system into the ground and calling it discipline. And eventually, it'll crash. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Studies on cognitive function show that rest isn't optional. It's essential. Your brain needs downtime to consolidate memories, to process information, to reset your stress response. When you don't rest, you're not just tired. You're operating at a fraction of your capacity. You're making worse decisions. You're less creative. You're more reactive. You're literally sabotaging the thing you're trying to protect, your productivity. And let's talk about what rest actually is, because I think you've been lied to. Rest isn't laziness. It's not doing nothing. It's doing something that restores you. For some people, that's sleep. For others, it's reading, or walking, or staring at the wall. It's anything that doesn't demand performance, that doesn't ask you to produce, that lets your nervous system come down from high alert and remember what safety feels like. But you've been taught that rest has to be earned, that you can only relax after you've checked every box, finished every task, proven you're worthy. And here's the problem with that logic. There's always another box, another task, another way to prove yourself. The finish line keeps moving. And you're chasing it until you collapse. That's not productivity. That's self-destruction with a to-do list. So what do? How do you retrain a brain that's spent decades associating rest with failure? You start small. You practice resting for 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Without immediately jumping up to do something. You sit with the discomfort. You notice the guilt. You name it. This is my nervous system trying to protect me from a threat that doesn't exist. You don't fight it. You acknowledge it. And you rest anyway. Not because the guilt is gone, but because you're teaching your brain new data. That rest doesn't lead to disaster. That you're still valuable when you're not producing. That your worth isn't conditional. And you stop asking permission. You stop waiting for external validation that you've done enough to deserve rest. Because that's the trap. You'll never feel like you've done enough. There will always be more. So you decide, right now, that rest isn't something you earn. It's something you need, like water, like air, non-negotiable. Here's what changed everything for me. I stopped measuring rest against productivity. I stopped asking, did I do enough today to deserve this break? I started asking, what does my body need right now? And sometimes the answer was work, and sometimes it was sleep, and sometimes it was absolutely nothing. And I stopped feeling guilty about any of it, because I realized my worth isn't tied to my output. I'm valuable because I exist, not because I produce. And you need to hear this. The world will always demand more from you. It will always find another task, another goal, another reason you should be working. But your body has limits. Your brain has limits. And ignoring them doesn't make you strong. It makes you unsustainable. Rest isn't weak. It's wise. It's the difference between running a marathon and burning out in the first mile. So if you're someone who can't sit down without your brain going into crisis mode, you're not lazy. You're not broken. You're just running old programming that told you rest is dangerous, and it's time to update the software, one guilt-free nap at a time. Tell me, can you rest without feeling guilty? Or does doing nothing make you feel like you're failing at life? Drop it in the comments. Let's find our people. And if this hit home, subscribe. The next video is about why some people physically can't accept help, even when they're drowning. And it's not pride, it's trauma. You'll want to watch that. Click it.